Hi everyone, my name's Donna with Bookkeeping Made Simple. So I want to talk about, yesterday I told you that Russell Brunson, completely unbeknownst to him, I read his book, I'm reading his book, Expert Secrets, and in it, it's a challenge to publish every day for at least a year. So that's what I'm doing. This has been something that I've struggled with because I've struggled with consistency, but I'm going to talk about that in a later episode. What I do want to talk about is managing employees versus managing contractors. And I have done both. I've been in business for myself. Well, I helped a friend start a bookkeeping business back in 2000, and I think it was 2009 by the time we got it started. So he's been in business for 13 years. And I thought, that I was a partner in the business. It turns out that I was wrong. I was just the first bookkeeper. I do still do some work for him. And by that, I mean, he refers business to me and I have my staff do it. So we're still on good terms. I don't want anyone to think that we are on less than good terms. We are on such good terms that I started dating his brother. So there's that. But through this, I have been in a position where I've managed contractors and where I've managed employees. And I want to talk about the difference, first of all, between contractors and employees and in how you deal with them. So I want to start off kind of by saying that to begin with, I was always told, well, I was told my whole life that I'm a great leader. So I was always a class president. I was the president of my 6th grade class. At church, I was always the president of the class of girls that I belonged to, always the president. When I was in Toastmasters, I was asked to be president there. I just have always been in leadership roles. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's leadership ability, just that people see me as a leader. My leadership style has changed a lot as I've gotten older. I used to be very nitpicky, but honestly, because I have ADHD, and I mentioned yesterday I didn't get diagnosed with it till I was 55, so it was just this year. And for those of you who are wondering, this is what 55 looks like. It was just this year that I found out that yes, I have ADHD. But because of that, I would forget to follow up with it. I would forget, I mean, when I worked for McDonald's and I had other staff that I was supervising, yeah, I could check to see if they scraped the gum off the bottoms of the tables. Because I was right there with them. Where I work remotely now and my employees work remotely, it's a little bit more challenging. So, and then the difference between bookkeepers, or excuse me, not bookkeepers, employees and contractors also makes it challenging. So let's talk a little bit about what the difference is. If you are a contractor, the people that you work with or for have no control over anything but the outcome. Okay, so if you hire an attorney, what are you hiring them for? You're hiring them to get the best deal in your divorce. You're hiring them to help you understand business law. You're hiring them to set up your corporation. You're hiring them to defend you in a criminal trial. And I have a lot of friends who are attorneys, so that's how I know all this. You're not hiring them as employees. If you were, you would be checking to see every little step that they're doing. No, you're hiring them to get an outcome. If you hire a subcontractor to come put a deck on your house, what do you care about? Do you care if they come at 6 in the morning? Well, you might care if they come at 6 in the morning. That's a little early. If they show up at 9 and they leave at a reasonable hour and they get your deck done at a reasonable time and it's steady and sturdy and can pass inspection, do you care how that subcontractor manages his employees? No, you do not. You are hiring for an outcome. And, maybe you get a guy that takes 2 weeks to do it, or you get a guy that did it in a day. That really doesn't matter. The pricing could be exactly the same. That really doesn't matter. What you're after is it a good, solid, sturdy deck that I can trust isn't going to give me splinters and isn't going to collapse when my kids are out there playing? Nobody's going to fall off of it. I'm not going to have any life. That's what I'm worried about. I'm not worried about how deep the concrete footings are. I trust that contractor knows what they're doing. However, as an employee, so basically as a contractor, you have very little control. You cannot control how they do the work. You cannot control the times they do the work. So taking a decking contractor by way of example, you will arrange with them. They will come to you and say, okay, we have time to come in on Monday. We're planning to be there at 10. We'll call and let you know if something occurs, and we can either make it early or late. But we're planning to be there by 10, and we expect this project to last for a week. Okay, you don't get any control over that. You can't say, hey, I'm hiring you to build my deck, and I need you today at 9 o'clock. It's not ever going to work. Or even, I need you Monday at 9 o'clock. The contractor may say, I have other jobs scheduled, because he doesn't just work for you, and that's one of the keys. An employer, however, excuse me, I'm the employer. I'm not used to this yet. I have only had employees since summer, so it's only been a couple of months. I think it was August is when I actually started hiring, and I got 2 really good ones right off the bat. And the third one happens to be my daughter, so I got 3 good ones. With an employee, however, you can say, you're required to be here at 10 or at 9, and you're required to clock out at 5, and you're required to take a 30-minute lunch, and you're required to take a 10-minute break in the morning and a 10-minute break in the afternoon. And the employee has to comply with that. Now, that also means that with an employee, I can say, these are your work tools. This is your phone system. This is the software that you use. This is how you do the job. This is when I want it completed. Because I'm the employer. I'm the one that's scheduling all the jobs. I'm the one that's making these decisions. The employee doesn't have to do anything but what I tell them to do. So I'm controlling what they do, when they do it, and how they do it. Previous to this, in 2020, I started hiring contractors, and I thought it was going pretty well. The problem was they knew they were contractors, and so I didn't have a lot of control. I never knew when someone was going to be available. I didn't know if I was going to get a phone call. I didn't know if, did I need to hire someone to cover the phones? Now I can say, I expect you guys to answer the phone when it rings to all of us at once. Somebody answer the damn phone. So I hired contractors, and they would decide to work in the middle of the night. And they would decide to kind of do things their own way. And that was fine to an extent. However, even though I say we're not customer facing, we are customer facing. We have office hours, and I enforce them. I am a Nazi about office hours and work-life balance. And part of that is that I know how difficult it is to manage like I was saying yesterday, I have ADHD. I have a hard time managing my attention and my energy. So as I was hiring contractors, I was like just being totally chill, and then realized later that I had no idea how much time anybody was putting in on a project. I had no idea and no way to find out if things were, I mean, I could tell if things weren't getting done. But then my contractors would get mad at me because I would go back and look and see that things weren't done, and I wouldn't pay them. And they were supposed to be getting a commission payment, but I was like, but you're not doing the work. So I ended up going strictly to, yeah, and maybe that was a complete mess up on my part. I'm inclined to believe it was. So I tried to use that as a learn. I mean, I paid everything I agreed to pay to the contractors, but I let them go for multiple reasons. A couple of them left because they had other jobs that they were able to go do. You know, they got a better job offer, which was fine. But I decided then that I had more control over and by control, what I really mean is I know what's going on when I have employees. They clock in at specific hours, they clock out at specific hours. I can then say, you're required to be at the phone from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. You're allowed to take as many breaks as you want. I mean, you know, we all work from home. Get up, put laundry in the laundry machine. Get up and sweep your floor if you need a break. It's fine. I'm not too concerned about that, and I teach the Pomodoro method. But I also need to know that we have a schedule and they're adhering to that schedule. You can't do that with contractors. I also needed to be able to not just manage them, but really tell them, this is what I want you to work on right now. This is your tasks for the day. And I can also say, I need all three of you working on one client today because there's a deadline. So you do this here, and you do this here, and you do this here, and then you do all the reconciliations. Okay, so I could say, you do this account, you do this account, you do this account. You know, maybe this client has 4 or 5 bank accounts and they all have a lot of transactions. I can sit down with my staff and say, you do this one, you do the checking account, you do the first credit card, and you do the second credit card. And I want you all working on this today, so it should get done today. Although I never get that kind of deadline out to my clients. I always expand it quite a bit so that if we get done early, we look like heroes. So I have found for myself, for my industry, that it is much easier for me to have employees. It's an entirely different way of managing them. Again, as employees, they're coming in believing and understanding that they work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, unless they have cleared time off with me. As opposed to before, when I would have one girl working 2 hours a week. Now, you may be thinking, how is that a bad thing? But for her to work 2 hours a week, I had to pay for a phone line. I had to pay for her software. I had to, so there's hard fixed expenses that go with each worker that I have, whether they're contractors, employees. And although I didn't have the tax expense, it has become worth it to pay the payroll tax, even though it costs me 7.2% of their wages, because I get to say, you work these days and these hours. And then I can leave and know without a doubt that my clients will be taken care of because I have employees, not contractors. If this is not something that they do, you know, when they have time, you know, maybe if I have time, you know, in between taking care of my kids, you know, if I have time in between running errands for, no, they have a job and they all understand that and they're paid well for it. So that to me is the difference. Now, different industries are going to have different ways of handling things. I've mentioned before construction. You have a general contractor that manages the whole project, and he hires subcontractors. But each of those subcontractors, they have to work with the general contractor, and then they have to manage their employees. Their people are all employees. They have to be. Kind of as an example in construction, my ex-husband, Fabian, he and I are still really good friends, which I'm very thankful for. But he works in concrete. He is an employee, so he's required to clock into the shop at this time and ride with them. You know, basically he goes in the company truck to the work site. He does the work, and then he's not really done until they bring him back and he can clock out. But his bosses are contractors to a general contractor. So they work with the general contractor to make sure that, okay, according to our job schedule, because we have 20 general contractors we work with, we have time to do this project from this date to this date. Okay? The general contractor cannot say, I have to have you here on this date. The subcontractors have to go to him and say, this is when we're available, because they have other contractors they work for. And that's one of the big differences. My contractors that were working for me worked only for me, as far as I know. But they were inconsistent. They were, I wasn't getting the results that I wanted out of them. And this is not a dig. If any of them are watching, this is not a dig. I had a couple that were great. But my outcome, since I've gone to employees, has been much better, because I can say, it's this much an hour. This is how many hours a week you're allowed to spend on this client. This is what I want you to do. And then I can depend on the fact that they are going to be there. Which, by the way, is a big deal. So I kind of want to go over to the IRS website. Okay. So the IRS defines contractors, or the difference is they look at behavioral control, financial control, and the relationship of the parties. So behavioral control means, how do you direct them in their work? How do you manage them? If the employer, for lack of a better term, if the company has a right to direct and control what is accomplished, what is done, how it's done through instructions or training or anything else, that's one of the things that they look at. Is this person a contractor or an employee? Well, one of the things they look at is behavioral control. The second one is, does the business have a right to direct or control the financial and business aspects of the worker's job? Now, this is where Uber got into trouble, because Uber said, although you can also work for Lyft, Uber said, we decide the pricing. So financial control would be the extent to which the worker has unreimbursed expenses. Contractors may have a lot of unreimbursed expenses. Employees have to be reimbursed for everything. The extent of the worker's investment in the facilities or tools used, the extent to which the worker makes his or her services available on the relevant market, how the business pays the worker, and the extent to which the worker can realize a profit or loss. So, in other words, does the employer have control over the amount of money an employee can make? If they're employees and not contractors, then the employer has a lot of control. If they're contractors, then the employee can say, well, I'm going to contract with 5 or 10 different parties, and the contracting firm has no control over that. And then the final thing is the relationship of the parties. So that does include written contracts, but a written contract between a firm and a potential contractor does not by itself constitute a contractor relationship. Whether or not benefits are provided. So insurance, pensions, vacation pay, or sick pay. I offer retirement plans, but I do not match. What I offer is I will pay for the administration fees of the retirement plan, and that way my employees have a place to put their money. The permanency of the relationship. When I hire someone, I want them on for years. I don't ever want them to quit. So I'm expecting a permanent relationship. And the extent to which the services performed by the worker are a key aspect of the regular business of the company. So as I was reviewing my contractor versus employee status, I realized that my contractors should have been employees. And so as they left, and like I said, most of them left for other jobs. One left a little disgruntled because she was not a very nice person. I'm just going to be honest. Yeah. But one, they were integral to the services that I provide. I was expecting a permanent relationship. I do want to control their investments. I do want to reimburse them for things that they purchase on my behalf. I don't want them to be able to incur a loss. I do pay taxes on their behalf. So I have created an employer-employee relationship with my employees. Now, like I often say, one of the benefits to being kind of laid back and not very micromanaging is that I'm flexible whenever I can be flexible. And when I decide that I cannot be flexible on something and I have to absolutely say, no, this is the way it's going to be, people do sit up and take notice because I don't do that often. And that's something I feel like a lot of business owners don't seem to understand, especially big corporate businesses. I really think if I can be flexible, I will be flexible. If I cannot be flexible, not only will I explain that, no, I absolutely need you in the office because it's a very powerful word, because we have a client that has a deadline coming up that we have no control over. And so we need everybody here to work on this together as a team. And then because I try to be a good leader, if I get pushback on that, the answer might be, if you guys can work together on Slack, or we use Teams, to organize the work, then I'm okay with that. But this must be done by this date. Period. So employees and contractors are managed differently. My preference for my industry is to have employees, although they cost more. So there's a lot of things that go into that decision, and the control over the worker was a key one for me. So that's all I want to talk about today. These are more documenting what I'm going through as a business owner, so that I can meet my challenge. So I am excited to continue to share my journey with you.